letting in the truth at a certain level is an energetic thing. It's not just how you tell the story to yourself, right? And there's no right or wrong way necessarily to tell the story unless you're overtly lying to yourself, right? So as you just sit, like there's a way that Mesmer Renicum, pardon me, talks about when he's doing, kind of what's become kind of land honoring and all this stuff and all that actually happens. He just says something really interesting that I think, and he's talking about this about the past. I want to do it in the present. He says, let's just sit quietly for a second and acknowledge that something happened. Doesn't get into the story of who stole what land, right? Something happened and it wasn't great, right? And now when you let that in, do you lift your chest to get rid of that feeling? Or do you lift your sternum to move into that feeling? To get underneath it. So in my spaces, when I let this in and I let my mind tell too many stories, I get super agitated. I'm also agitated when I just feel the hatred and the blame and the anger that's happening. Right? Now, when I claim my own empty space, I'm not pushing out the truth. Feel your sitting bones in your feet. Trust your bones. You get to move. You get to decide what to do in response. How you're going to move, how you're going to think. You have a home teepee. And it moves. The breath goes in. The breath goes out. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. This level is true no matter what's happening. No matter what story the mind is telling. This level is not supposed to cancel the mind's story. It's to nourish. It's to remember. You get to choose later what to do, how to be. Still, there's a midline, so my hands are going into prayer to remind me where my spine is, where my sternum is. Right? You don't have to do it with your hands. I got each elbow down. I got a triangle happening between my elbows and the base of my hands. Got a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? And I'm making sure that I'm bringing my energy so that there's empty space between my hands. I'm bringing the empty space together. I'm landing it. I'm lifting up through my spine, keeping the jaw soft. I'm watching the inhale expand, the exhale extend through my spine. This too was always here. Whether I choose ways for my mind to feel it, that's on me. I'm glad we have two sides to the nose. I'm glad there's empty space in between. I'm glad we have two lungs. the possibility of it being uneven and me being able to unify is the gift of being alive. From separation into unity. I learned things from the exhale. That I should maybe drop in my shoulder blades and lifting under my sternum. And doing that from my sitting bones and from my heels. I definitely learned from the inhalation. I'm here to appreciate. Good, and then release your hands down to your thighs, palms up. Put them lightly on your lap. Sternum up towards the chin down over the sternum, and just notice, and even release again. Notice there's a reason why they call this a lock. It actually lines up some of the core happenings. So again, sternum lifts, chin drops, and you can feel the difference from when you're not doing it. Something comes into a certain kind of clarity. The way I receive the breath gets an extra level of discipline. Not for all the time. For now. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So, I was going to ask, but I'm just going to kind of have this be a rhetorical question. When you center and you get to that place, let's call it a place, I don't know. Language is hard, right? What is that place? Like, so kind of go inward and don't just do Shavasana. Just don't go to the place for nourishment. Okay? Go there with a little bit of inquiry. Right? I think this is why I'm not a formal meditation practitioner, but I think there's something here that some others have said is kind of important, right? I can kind of get it. And then from whatever that place is, maybe you can watch the mind have to continue dancing, right? And then maybe it comes into phase and comes with it, comes into the core of it, All right, and just know that place is there all the time, and sometimes it's nourishment, sometimes maybe it's unified. Think about some of the words that you might get from Indian philosophy, right? Maybe it's actually unified, but maybe it's unified because there's a ceasing. Maybe ceasing and unification are the same thing. I don't know. Start moving around a little bit because some of you getting antsy on the call. Someone you're getting like, wait, I gotta move. Maybe ceasing is the big part of the unity. I don't know. That's pretty scary for the mind, right? So, mind's not gonna like that shit, right? So you're moving around. Or you might be hungry for it. Maybe, So, in yogic philosophy, I'm going to take my legs away just because I want to open up kind of more of the living energy, right? The live energy. So, one of the goals, I guess, to what I appreciate about or understand about, I'm moving around a little bit, getting the base of my spine, some movement in the base of my spine between my sitting bones, but I'm watching the midline the whole time. So I'm moving around on my sitting bones, but I'm being acutely aware of the midline that's between the sitting bones, right? And I'm changing gravity, right? So one of the gifts, and they're serious freaking burdens, of the version of consciousness that human beings have, is we have the capacity to feel separated from things. Right? We have this extra layer of space. I don't know if space is the right word, but you know what I mean, right? And human beings do all these things to express that space. Like, what about, isn't one of our greatest mind tricks is expectation? Right? So in other ways, what's going to happen? You fill that space with a thought, right? Think about when you start thinking about that separation, think about kind of all art comes from there, right? Your thoughts come from there. That space, minds are able to somehow fill that space that comes from being separate. And then we get these myths like the fall from the Garden of Eden, and we get all this stuff trying to even mythically describe that extra little layer of separation. And isn't that the space we feel disappointed in? You think, wait, no, we should be better than this, right? But isn't it that space that also makes love so powerful, let's say? Because love closes that space. You feel compelled. When you love somebody, you feel like you're projecting out towards that person. You feel them come into you, right? So this space is definitely got a double-edged, I hate edged, but it's got, it's not clear, right? There isn't just one story to tell. There's a whole bunch of stories. Right? And that separation supposedly is the source of suffering. I don't know. You can kind of get what they're saying when they say that. Right? The big they. The big they. Right? So I have a hard time when I can watch the same video and then hear a spin of the story where the words are just meant to influence. They're not meant to capture the truth, right? They're not being honest at all. Of course it's a little ambiguous. Of course that's true. Of course that's true. Right? So now we're back to where we, hope you're lifting up and putting your low back into a little bit of traction. So you're getting more space, right? So it turns out that the yogis are trying to tell you that there's a midline, let's say, let's call it a midline, and the mind is an outward-facing organ. So it's gonna carry the space, the separation. It's gonna have to tell stories to fill in that space. Sit up straight and tall again. Supposedly, some of our mind habits, some of the stories we tell, are what are the cause of suffering. Right? So again, occupy the space you're in. So in yoga, they talk about this pure observer that's there. I don't know. These are the words. I get their attempt to set words, right? And somehow I can look at the scene out my window and not have to have a particular thought about it. I can take the whole thing in. The panorama of the view is a metaphor for the fact that it's also behind me, right? It envelops me. Now, I can kind of tell that if you want to F it up, I wouldn't do this because right now, as you start to go to this place, it'd be kind of violent. So, but if you wanted to kind of screw it up, you could really clench your jaw right now and block this space. These are the habits of anxiety and stress, that you're trying to block this space because too much is coming in, right? Can you be an empty enough vessel to let the things pass through you that's happening? Not to avoid them, but to become part of the stream. There is no bypass for the truth, by the way. There's shitty things happening in Minnesota right now. I don't do yoga to bypass. And still, I got 2 lungs, I got 2 nostrils. I have 2 sitting bones, I have 2 heels. It's coming in sets of 2. Because there's the potential for wobbling in between. And the task of human consciousness is to unify. If it was just one thing, it'd be too easy. We wouldn't earn it. So as you breathe into each nostril, into each lung, feel each sitting bone in each foot. Use the 2 to feel the 1 that goes right up through the midline. Good, and then release. So there's a story in the Bhagavad Gita that I've been thinking about since I was 21, 22. It's in chapter 2. I'm taking my legs wide again. And I use this as a metaphor. This is not I've only read basically the first 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, right? But it's a story in which, the background to I'm moving back and forth again. The background to the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm kind of moving my spine in circles around stuff. I'm trying to remember that I'm alive when I'm having hard thoughts, right? Arjuna is hanging out with Krishna, and he's in the middle of what's about to be a civil war with his brother. Okay, and he's super bummed. He doesn't want to kill things. He doesn't want to kill his brother. He doesn't want to do any of that, right? Take your arms wide, take up more space, right? Lift your sternum, and then back down. And Krishna says something kind of remarkable, I think, to him. The Western morality part of me wants to say, Krishna should say, well, don't. Find nonviolence, right? And I kind of do still believe that, right? But Krishna doesn't say that. He says, you have to know the source of what you are, and you don't always get to judge the times you're in, right? So you have to do both. So you have to go to war anyway, whatever that means. So you have to do that and become enlightened at the same time. right? You have to process both. I'm going to lean over, ground, and take my arm up. I'm going to drop the shoulder blade back to the midline because I know something important about the midline. I'm going to lift my sternum to stabilize that, to find the space between my sitting bones. I'm going to go down through each heel, and it's all happening in one movement, and I'm going to breathe. The source is staying the same. The midline is staying the same. Only my body's changing. Go the other way. So I almost went too fast. I didn't ground enough here. I'm catching my own mistakes as I'm practicing, right? My mind's already about on the next thing I want to say. So I always thought that was an important story for me in my development. Finding whatever it is that is the center and the calm of it does not mean you don't have to make judgments. Doesn't mean you don't act in your life. And I don't like, of course, most stories, a lot of stories have some context of war. I don't think this has to be about war or fighting or violence. It means that I can be in the place that I am and still have my mind tell a story of how I'm going to participate in what's going on. Right? Back and forth. It's very tricky living in a time like this, right? Get bigger in space. Notice that your mind is going to want to make your space smaller and feel threatened when things are unstable. So sometimes you just got to take up more space. I hope all of you take up more space. Right? If you decide to take up more space and take things out your mouth and say things out your mouth, cool. Right? We got some weird stuff happening. Back to downward facing dog. So I'm going to put my hands, I'm going to do both versions. I'm going to do one where I just do it on my lap. So I'm doing it this way first. Now, if I do it more like a swooping up, I'm closer to upward facing dog and cobra, right? So you got it in your mind, figuring your own body, not in your mind. In your own body, you got to figure out the difference between upward facing dog and downward facing dog when you're doing this. And so think of the difference. Doesn't have to be a big difference. It has to be a difference that's like the way an octopus maybe puts dye into water. It's like a change of color. So if I'm going to do downward facing dog, more than upward facing dog, I'm going to really, as I'm down here with my hands like this, and I'm having my bones in my wrist and my forearm against the bones of my knee, right? I'm making sure that there's coordination between the drop of my shoulder blade, right? And it's not just a lift of my sternum, it's like a grounding of my sternum. But I'm looking down, so I make sure I keep the connection to my sitting bones and my feet. I broaden across the collarbones, take the upper arm and squeeze the tricep and bicep and squeeze the bone while I keep my shoulder blades back and extend and open my palms. But I'm looking down. I'm feeling the connection between my sitting bones and where my forearms are hitting my knees. And still, air comes into each nostril, into each lung. And I'm looking for that and the space in between that. Good, and then release. When you do that, when you get that focused on it, right? Does anyone start to feel that kind of buzzing hum coming through your nervous system? Right? You start to feel like you're being focused. You know what I'm talking about, kind of? Nobody? Nod your head, anybody? Say, yes, please. Don't let me be out here by myself, right? And so now think about that. So what's the source of that? Right? What's the source of all of a sudden when I get more disciplined and receive and have my actions and I receive, I start to hum. Zzz, my nervous system goes zzz, right? And then I can breathe into the hum, not just breathe into my lungs, right? Making my breath congruent with something larger than me, even though I'm getting there through my body. Same pose again. Now, in a way, I like doing downward facing dog this way because I'm so connected to my own body, right? But there's advantages to have your hands on the table. But I'm trying to get back to where there's enough focus and discipline that I become a better conduit of what is more general. My nervous system starts to buzz because it's coming in resonance with something larger. And the hum I feel and the action, my actions, I can do some wrong actions and screw up the buzz. I could only open one palm and not the other, and that would be weird. So now, as you get whatever the hum is you're getting today, try to breathe into it, exhale through it, keep it. Use your breath to amplify. How are you going to use your breath after this class? What are you going to be a conduit of? That's the story for your mind to tell and then release. Now, when I do downward facing dog with my hands on my desk, it changes. And it's the same, right? So now my hands are on my desk. I get to really hone in on how to make my arms feed my legs in a way that isn't the case. When I do it when I'm sitting back, I can get my spine to feed my legs better, right? Right? Because I'm in this position, I got this really strong connection here. Here I'm extended, right? And I can figure out, so if we were I would want all of you, if I was teaching a traditional class and all of you were observing, okay, I'd want to adjust a more traditional student's pose, and I'd want you to be in close enough proximity where you could feel the invisible pulse going through the traditional student's nervous system, right? So what I would do is I would come, and you can do this to yourself. I've been doing stuff like this, I've been freaking myself out, by the way, the last week or so with some weird, cool shit about my joints and my hands. But there's a reason why we tell you to, if your hands can go on the table, where we tell you to push down through the index finger. Unfortunately, what happens is that people think of that too much as a physical action and a rotation, right? So they make it more physical, when really you're trying to ground the empty space in that knuckle, right? You're trying to get it more flat. So for those of you that can, and even I'm thinking about Joe right now, and I'm thinking about your hands, and I'm thinking with the other hand, even try to make more contact, right, by pushing down on the index knuckle or on that side of your hand, right? So you take the other hand or whatever, could even be your elbow, right? Right? That's harder though, right? And push and open that space. Okay. I've been doing this too much because I can feel I can feel that like a warm Calgon bath that goes through my whole body because I've been really focusing it. But let me tell you, there's something really, Does anyone feel that at all? See, can you feel that? That should fuck everybody up. It means the empty space in one knuckle talks to my legs, right? It talks to what I can't hear and can't control. So I say things you're like, hey, the empty space is already unified. And you think I'm saying some weird shit? And I'm saying some weird shit, but I'm saying something literal. Now I'm going to do the other hand, because if I just do one hand, right? And you know what F's me up is that I don't feel it as well on this side. It must be because everything comes in twos and I'm supposed to figure out how it comes into unity. So I'm doing it on this side. And it's like, well, I think it's because I have more dysfunction in my right elbow and my right shoulder, but I don't know. Right? So I'm trying, oh, there, I got it. So I hit the sweet spot of like, whew, that goes through my whole body. Now I'm going to take that because I want to mark this even better. I'm going to lift my sternum just slightly to amplify it. And I'm going to mark what I just found with my breath. I hate for this image, but kind of like a dog leaves a scent. Pees on something, right? I'm using my breath to mark territory, energetic territory, and then release. So what I would want to do if we were all together is I'd want to have a traditional student's pose. Remember, a traditional student is going to have their butt kind of straight up in the air, kind of skyward, and their legs down. But I want us all to feel when we had someone, suppose it's Bethany, and I'd have her push down on the index part of the hands, the index side of the hand in a traditional student's dog pose, and you would literally watch the legs get lighter. You can actually see it go right through the skin, right? And the pose gets lighter. The thing is that people have to learn how to support that by working their legs better, and they don't get that, right? Usually. And it has to do with making the crease between the base of the spine and the femur bones crisper, but that, I don't want to get too complicated. But there's a thing that you can feel when it happens. Hands back onto the table. So I'm not doing it on the table this time. Now I'm going to take what I just learned from the table, right? And the fact that somehow the empty spaces lights my whole nervous system, and I don't really have to understand that because understanding it doesn't really help my practice, right? Right. So I'm going to go back to doing it on my legs, right? So I'm going to go back to this position here. But I'm going to try to carry with me the insight I get from my hands on the table, right? So here I am like this, right? And when I think about the empty space in that knuckle, when I overdo my hands, if I overflex my hands, I can totally see that I'm cutting off prana, right? That's why the instruction is to broaden the skin on the palm of the hand to make it more open. Right? But so now I know this feeling from being on the table because I'm using memory and I'm being forward and backward in time because that's what yogis do, right? I'm remembering the feeling of the flattening of the empty space into the table. And I'm taking that sensation and I'm learning how to work my hands when they're in the air like this. I'm learning to work my hands in a way that I'm trying to remember the feeling of how that open knuckle on the side of the hand lit my whole body. And can you see now why I tell you to broaden or open the skin on your palms? Because I don't want you to work too physically to get the energy. Now, as you use the table without the table being there, a miraculous feat of human consciousness, right? Breathe into each nostril, into each lung, into each sitting bone. Make sure, like I just noticed that my right elbow is not doing it right because it's swollen a little bit. So I need to get that to come online. Oh, there, I just did it. I got it to come online better, and I did it by pressing into my knee. Oh, my head's crooked. Because now I'm following the empty space to align my pose. And I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out. And I'm touching the truth that doesn't change, despite all the effed up stuff that's going on in my own pose and in the world at the time I'm living. Good, and then release. See how I did that at the end, that clever little turn to the whole world and the whole theme of the class, right? The asymmetry in your body is not that different than the asymmetry outside of you. Take your right hand outside your left leg. So at a certain point, you just have to spit this shit out, right? Right? twists are cleansing, right? So I'm going to sit here for a second. So some of you already, I'm all into the twist. I'm forgetting to draw the auger down. So I'm giving a lot of you people on the screen, I'm giving you some shit right now because you already went too far. So just take the hand on the other side, get a stabilized pose, and sit here before you twist. You're already twisted, right? But because you're already in this position, but land it. Land the midline. But how you land the midline, you feel your sitting bones. You feel the space in between the sitting bones. And you go like, oh, God, when you used to teach this twist really intensely, following biggest Engar, I'd say hit down with the sitting bone and lift the lower abdomen up to make the midline travel up to the sternum while finding the bones to stay on the earth. All this is happening before I'm even really twisting. I'm making sure that the midline is going to be part of the twist, right? But my mind wants to keep going farther into the twist, right? I'm thinking if I yell louder to someone that isn't seeing what's going on, that somehow that'll be effective. Probably not. I'm going to find this place. I'm going to breathe into my midline. I'm going to feel the twist. Inhale. I'm going to expand. And then I'm going to take the expansion and I'm going to twist my spine to cleanse the stuck energy out. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Remember, twists also help grief by cleansing and empowering the movement of static empty spaces. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Good, and then release. Come on back to center. Whew, let the twist be. So I was on this call this weekend. There's a group, it's a national group, but there's a chapter in the Twin Cities, and their local neighborhood chapter is called Indivisible. And they're trying to figure out how to organize nonviolently, and you know, it's about the caucuses, and I might even go to the caucus this year. Who knows? I might start, because part of the energy that I have in articulation needs to start coming out my mouth. But I was listening to the people leading the thing, and you know, it's because the way their mind is telling the story. They were coming off saying things like, "We're the righteous cause, we're the righteous side," okay, which on one level I totally get. But righteousness freezes energy as static. Doesn't leave room for other people as well. And you know what the problem is? We have to bring people with us. We can't just judge them and push them over. Although we have to do a little bit of that too, right? It's all of the above, right? So righteousness is a form of clenching your jaw, right? All right, so sit in the center. Take your left hand outside. Find a place. My body's so different on this side. So I'm finding a place to be grounded. But I'm not being in a rush. I'm trying to feel the spaces in my midline before my mind wants to twist and yell out into the pose. Right? So so I know with this, for me on this side especially, this side of my rib cage pounce out because I have scoliosis. So I know I'm pushing on my rib cage right here, and this would be good even if you don't have scoliosis. Push on your outside of your rib cage to find your opposite hip. Use that to find where the midline actually is, and align your shoulder blades in action and drop your shoulder blades more congruently with the midline. That's what I'm doing right now. Then I'm going here. I'm inhaling and creating more space with the inhale. I'm exhaling and using the twist of my spine to cleanse and move the static empty space, which I just said, careful of righteousness. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Lift under the collarbones, go skyward with hope. Drop the shoulder blades. Move the static energy. Good, and then come on back to center. Feel the center. After that, I can kind of feel that I intuitively want a dog pose. So do a dog pose. I want to find the midline again. And when I do it on the table and I get my hands right and the index finger right and I make a connection all the way down through my arms, through my spine to my legs. If I drop my shoulder blades and lift slightly from the underside of my arms up, right? As I keep the index finger side of my hand grounded. Does anyone feel their legs more? Breathe into whatever hum you're having. Lengthen your spine. So in a traditional pose, I'd tell you to extend the outside of your hips up towards the ceiling. So in this pose, I'm telling you to hit the outside of your hips and your sitting bones into your chair seat. There's freedom through your chair seat to the ground. Use it to extend out the top of your head, but keep broadening across your collarbones and dropping your shoulder blades. It's getting louder. Good, and then release. Come on back to center. Ooh, that one actually, I don't know about you, but that one fatigued me a little bit. So I'm going to rock back and forth a little bit. This is what's great about being in a wheelchair, right? My wheels are rolling back and forth a little bit, and I'm just getting a little movement, a little extension, making sure I don't get static. And by the way, morality is one of our best ways to get people to change behaviors, but just know it's a fine line between righteousness and violence. Because righteousness is a form of violence. I mean, it's complicated. So, as someone was already anticipating in the UK, different kind of, I want you to lean forward. I want to know a deeper kind of twist. Because remember, sometimes twisting is like a barfing out of space, right? Right? Letting it go. Barfing's a little bit hard. You probably only have seen these if you live in the United States. You know those Mountain Dew commercials, I've said this before, where the person's got a wet hair, some young, surfer-looking dude's got wet hair, and he throws his head in the water goes off his hair in like a spiral, right? Or you think about when you twirl around a sprinkler, and it goes everywhere. That's what I mean by getting something out. So, but this time we're going to go towards the earth, right? So we're going to lean forward. I got to get my screen a little bit further down. We're going to lean forward and ground. So I got my bones, right? And I'm coming forward. And I think I'm trying to decide if I want to be here. I think I want to be here because I think I want this space open, I think. But this is the kind of choices you get to make as a yogi as you're practicing at home, right? So now I got to pay attention to my shoulder positions, right? And the space between my shoulder blades. So I'm forward, and I like that. I feel strong, right? But I want the turn. So what's really cool, when you got the sprinkler in your hand, you start to spin it, think about don't spin it yet, right? Think about when you first start the centrifugal force, that first spray of water that starts to go in a circle. Find that before you go to the big turn, right? So there it is. So in order for me to really get it, so I just did it with my sternum. Now I got to get it move my sternum in relationship to my sitting bones, in relationship to my heel. Well, that's the first burst of that water starting to turn. So I don't want to miss the first burst. So now I'm going to go back to neutral. I'm going to make sure I get the first burst. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. And in slow motion, that water is coming off of me. I use my breath, and the spray gets even stronger. I exhale. I'm trying to cleanse. Back to center. Be in the center. Find the midline. So I bring my knees together for me to find the midline. And then back on my knees, right? Then I'm going to go forward. I'm going to find the earth. Find the earth. Find where I want this arm. Here, I don't want the arm so far back. On this side, I can tell. I'm going to notice when I go too far back on my sitting bones, things are disconnected. When I go forward and lengthen my spine a little bit, it's kind of like a little bit like twisting in dog pose, but let's not talk about that right now. Right? And so ground, find the sitting bones. Drop the shoulder blades, find the space between the sitting bones, the space between the shoulder blades. Lift under the collarbones, extend out to the top of the head, but don't forget the energy from your sitting bones is going all the way to the ground. Now, find that first little movement that starts to turn the water in a centrifugal in a round, right? And then I'm going to come back to center, and then I'm going to inhale, and I'm not going to miss the first turn of that water, and then I'm going to let it go. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. And I'm going to follow the big spray with my head and all that stuff. But I'm not going to have that overwhelm the first step of the spray. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. Good. I hope that some of you, and then come back to center. I hope that some of you has figured out is that farther into a pose is not necessarily more. Right? That first couple of things that turn the energy, that's the more, right? I'm going to come forward on my elbows here. I'm going to lean forward. You can do it on your knees. Right? Right? And I'm going to make sure that I'm feeling... See, once you figure out, if any of you kind of figured out this shit about your index finger mount and how it touched everything, right? Or felt it, figure this out, you feel it, and don't worry, it'll come with time, it's whatever. Just trust your yoga teacher and know that it's coming if you want it to, right? Right? As soon as I do my elbows, I got the same thing, right? I can actually, and if I drop my shoulder blades a little bit and spread them, my legs light up. And it's very similar to this energetic realization. It's like right away, right? And then I can add to it. I can actually, as I drop my shoulder blades, I'm going to try to extend my tricep towards my elbow. I'm dropping my shoulder blades. I'm going to broaden across my sternum. And as I do this, does anyone kind of feel their legs more yet? My hands aren't together yet, right? Don't be in the midline yet. What we're doing is actually setting up headstand, right? We're not just doing prayer. We're like doing headstand, right? And then, if you want to, bring it in. But notice when you bring it into the midline, something is lost between the upper arm bones and the femur bones. But now I got to find it again. That means I have to be forward and backward in time. Breathe into each nostril, into each sitting bone, into each lung, and into each sitting bone. In fact, I'm going to stay here for a second. Now I'm going to bring my hands together in a clasp. I'm going to turn this part of my wrist towards the screen. I'm going to lift my forearms back towards my face, bring them back towards my face as I lengthen the underside of my upper arm towards my elbows. I'm actually going to touch the top of my forehead with my hands so I can really make this headstand. Good. And then come out of this. And if you weren't able to do that stuff, now everybody just do this stuff. Heel of your hand on your bridge of your nose. Lay your fingers down. Move the skin of your forehead slightly, just ever so slightly towards the bridge of your nose. This is part of the meditation feeling that I think is in headstand. And you balance from this point. And you breathe. But we're doing this to prepare for Shavasana. Now, I'm going to look at you all, but if I were you, I might keep my eyes closed, but maybe I'd open if you need to do it to move. Come back into your chair. Lean back. Find safety and security. Keep feeling the imprint of your hand on your forehead. Use it to help you soften your jaw, relax your tongue and jaw. You don't hold up the world. The world holds you up. You get to choose what to do with it. Make sure your lips together, teeth slightly apart. Allow the hum, the thing that never leaves you. Your mind leaves it because it's outward facing. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Be grateful, especially for your body. It keeps you alive. Your mind does not keep you alive. If you trust anything, trust your spine. I think you should probably trust your spine and its commitment to life more than your mind. Your mind's going to have to tell all types of stories. It's not its fault. It's its job. I think there's a really thing that I know at least I'm incredibly grateful for, and I hope I could pass this on to you. Can you believe that the hum nourishes? The hum is part of why we lie horizontally usually when we sleep. Because when you support the spine, the hum pervades the whole body. The hum not only nourishes, it empowers. Just watch your stories that your mind tells. Feed the stories that you know in your heart and in your spine can help. Don't be afraid. I think we have to start talking to more people. It's not easy not to be angry. All right, everybody. I hope that after this class, when I just had a hit of it, when I bring my hands into prayer, I actually feel the whole thing, the story of the twos coming right through, right? Knowing that I have to be and search for the space between the wobbling two, right? Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.